in an office here, John Park, and they're our sponsors, Morgan Lewis. I'm the CEO of a company called the Algonquin Group, and we help American companies expand into Asia, Asian companies expand into the United States. And we're very honored to have pulled together this panel here to give you all sorts of insights into different aspects of the big data arena these days. And we have a special guest, our guest of honor and sponsor.
Sorry, I was on a conference call. So.
Introduce yourself.
I'm John Park. I'm the partner here at Morgan Lewis, and partner 65 with Charlene, with the corporate capital task force here at VCTaskforce, and I've been hosting the events here for many years. It's been
Great, thank you. So without further ado, let me introduce our illustrious panel, and we'll go ahead and start with you, Jim.
Okay, so I'm Jim Walsh. I'm CTO of a product development services company called Globallogic. We do product design and development for other people. So what I hope attracts Charlene to us as a member of the panelists, we get to see a lot of what's going on in the industry, because at any given time we work with about 250 different clients, and we do a lot of work in the area of big data analytics, mobile, cloud, and other areas, and medical devices, automotive, lots of different areas. So the Globallogic, we're about 7,000 people. We're been in business about 10 years, and we have development centers in the U.S., and design centers in the U.K., Ukraine, Argentina, and India.
Great.
Good evening. I'm Evangelos. I'm a senior partner at Trident Capital, private equity and venture capital firm based here in Palo Alto. We manage about $2 billion, invest primarily in North America in 4 areas: cloud-based applications, healthcare, IT applications, security, and applications that monetize the internet. Common thread to many of these efforts is data. I've been working with data since in data analytics actually since about '84. Spent about 20 years of my life running companies or divisions of companies, most of them in BI, in business intelligence, data warehousing, and analytics. So always involved in this space.
And investment-wise, what stage do you usually invest in?
So these days we typically invest in companies with about 8 to 10 million in revenue on up. We put about 10 to 15% of our fund in earlier stage companies, but to us early stage means at least 2 million in revenue, so not quite the raw startup that typically one associates with this type of events. But we know that we have a lot of funding sources, like Dave's fund, that find the good entrepreneurs. So we typically come after that to grow, to help them grow the companies even more.
And Dave brings you good companies, doesn't he?
He does.
He does.
Like to do more. Hello, David Blumberg from Blumberg Capital, where I'm the founder and uncreative namer of the company. And Matt is a fresh recruit. We're really excited. We're now 6 investment partner groups, 6 investment professionals, 1 office in Israel, in Tel Aviv, 5 of us in San Francisco. We very much focus, as Evangelos mentioned, on early stage. So seed and A is our sweet spot. $500,000 to a few $1 million would be the ticket size that we start off with. We sort of say go early and go big, and that means that not just big in terms of dollars, but our efforts are going to help early stage companies early. It would be business development, recruiting, helping you raise from my esteemed larger and better colleagues like your firm and all the others in the Valley and further afield. Another thing that's unusual about Blumberg Capital is we actually don't care where your engineers are. So you can be in Norway or Timbuktu, we really don't care. We say we can add a lot of value in Silicon Valley and in, say, the New York complex and in other major metro areas where we have excellent network. But if you are a foreign company, international company, that's just fine with us. We don't require you to be in bicycle distance of Palo Alto Square. stuff like that.
But do you want them to have a office in the Bay Area? Some sort of
okay.
connection?
Think about this. We're a very small, early-stage focused firm. We can add a lot of value in certain areas, but we're not going to be your first choice if you're launching a business for China in China. If you're from China and want to launch into the world and through Silicon Valley and New York and so on, the gateways of a lot of the natural big partnerships that are here, we're very well suited for you. If you're doing a regional play, probably not for us. But if you have a global technology engine, this is Silicon Valley. You're right here as Mecca, ground central. We can help you a lot here. And with the big logical early adopter partners, we have a big CIO council that loves this topic of big data right now. I'll just stop there.
Okay. I'm Matt Sarrel, and I'm also really original with my naming because my company was called Matt Sarrel LLC. And then
good names are hard to find.
I know. Well, and no, it was funny. Then I had to pay to have a name search done, and I was like, there's very little chance there's another Matt Sarrel LLC. And now we're Sarrel Group because we've gotten bigger, and we do technical marketing, mainly in network security and enterprise software. We help companies tell their story, their technology story, why they're better, why people should buy their products, and we do that through lab testing and really get hands-on with the products, and then write marketing collateral like white papers or blogging or social media campaigns, things like that. And then I also I was a technical director at PC Mag for 4 years, and I ran all the testing that was for networking, security, software, what else? Well, anyway, and I'm now a contributing editor to PC Mag, covering security and video games, which is really interesting. I like to get people to pay me to do what I want to do, and if you're good enough at it, you can do it. I also write for GigaOM. I do large market landscape type pieces. Like I wrote, one of the earliest market analyses of NoSQL databases, trying to explain what was going on in that field. I wrote for eWeek. I write now for Enterprise Apps Today and eSecurity Planet, and I also blog. I think that. Oh, and also, since we're talking about big data, I have a master's degree in epidemiology, so I've been working with big data for 20 years or something.
Before it was big data.
Right, that's my joke. It used to just be called data.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm Shalin Sheth. I'm with Second Century Ventures. We're the corporate venture arm of the National Association of Realtors. Most people are actually surprised when I say that, but that's our background. We invest primarily in early stage companies through the Second Century Ventures fund. It's 2 to 20 million in revenue is what we look for. Mm-hmm. Primarily SaaS companies that have some applicability into small to medium businesses or real estate vertical where we can leverage our LPs to help the businesses grow. We've also launched an accelerator program called Reach, where we partner with even earlier stage companies as long as they're post product, and we work with them for 9 months and help them build strategy and grow in this vertical as well.
Mm-hmm. So why did Charlene pick you to be on the big data panel?
That's a good question. Big data has been a big area of interest for us. There's a lot of tools being developed, but if you think about small to medium businesses, they're fairly inefficiently run right now. And big data can really change that if you've got the right application and the right insights to help improve the way these small to medium business owners are running their businesses.
And those are the types of things that you're investing in?
That's absolutely the types of stuff we're looking for.
Right. So when you say 2 to 20, so how much do you usually, what's your typical bite size?
Yeah, so from Second Century Ventures, we usually invest between 2 to 5 and keep some money for follow-on.
Okay, great. So launching into the questions, gentlemen, David.
They're all so much smarter and more technical than me. Why do you pick on me first? Go ahead.
What kind of trends are you seeing in big data?
Okay, so I think there are a few that are kind of key, but think about what the enablers are. There was data in your era of epidemiology.
Oh, I know, it's different.
And what has changed that's so getting everybody so excited about it? I think a few things. One is the cloud. When things were in a company and locked in a warehouse. What a terrible name, data warehouse. Isn't that like the worst name possible for something? We should be liberating data and making it accessible, not locking it in some salt dome. So anyway, cloud, mobile, social data, sensors, and I'm probably forgetting some other things. These are big changes in the last 10-ish years that have made a lot of this revolution possible. So I think one of the biggest things is called consumerization. Even though big data is often thought of as a B2B topic, the fact that we're able to liberate and allow non-technical people to have access to the data, I think that's a very important trend. And so the business analysts need to get it, not the coders. They need to have interfaces, so reducing friction between the data analysis itself and the users. Most of them are going to be non-technical, but they're business savvy. Mm-hmm. So allowing that, I think, is going to be a big area. Another thing is breaking down the silos that have been created, and then unpacking the layers of old technology versus new that are often incompatible. So I don't know what you call that, but the glue that'll make things transparent and inter-exchange of data and transformative and so on between different nomenclatures, that's going to be an important area. Taking the silos and bringing them into combination pools of data. And then the thing that we're seeing, I think Matt and I are seeing this a lot, we're seeing so many companies in big data, is that the new business models are going to really drive this. Again, data's been around forever, and scientists have been around forever, needing it and so on, but business is what's driving it. The R is nice, but the D is really the critical part, R&D. Right. And so the D is where new business requirements, built often on the back of new technologies. For example, the revolution in sensors enables all kinds of new business models. Revolution in social media enables the mobile factor enables all kinds of new business models. So those three things, I would say: liberating the data to the end user, de-siloization or liberation of data to people, and new business models that make it attractive for people to find solutions somewhere or other that will help people solve real business problems. Because there's often
leverage on
a lot of the solutions are sitting there in people's data stores right now. Right. They just don't have access. They don't know how. They know how to do the calculations. They don't really know what to query often. So I'll stop there.
No, that's great. Evangelos, you and I were talking about that.
So I don't know, maybe every panel needs a curmudgeon, and I'll be the curmudgeon in this panel, but
I want to be the curmudgeon.
You can duke it out.
So I would say in terms of trends, and for me, trends meant what am I seeing as opportunities to invest, right? Mm-hmm. And frankly, I see a lot of sameness. Let me start with that. Everybody is slapping the big data moniker on everything, whether it is big, small, wide, narrow. Okay, and I see a lot of companies interested in the infrastructure side of big data. Some of it realistic, in other words, they have something to add, but most of them not having anything to add. They just feel that if they come to us with a big data proposition, they will get money. In terms of applications, or in terms of applications of this infrastructure, we're seeing a lot of social media analytics, or some forms of analytics, but primarily around social media and around advertising technology, web analysis. And the second big category is log analysis, whether it is security logs, whether it is, again, web logs. There are some so I see. I call these trends because I see a lot of this type of companies coming forward. But for me, as I see them, I consider them worrisome because I don't think we're paying enough attention to important problems. I think we're trying to almost rework on problems that have been either addressed by somebody else or in the near past or in the far past. So,
Right.
but those are I'll stop here.
Right, right. Well, you see a lot.
Yeah. I think I would. I'm not going to vie for the curmudgeon title, but I would kind of separate it into three different groups. One is what are we seeing today that's real in terms of big data, right? And I would say we're seeing there's a large group of companies that already have big data, by which I mean data that's of sufficient quantity that conventional RDBMS and database mining and stuff like that is not a cost-effective approach, right? So typically that's in the that starts somewhere in the tens of terabytes range up to the petabytes range for us. So that's what we kind of consider the boundary big data. And there's some companies that already have data in that range. For example, telephone carrier.
Right.
They have mountains of call data records, which they're trying to monetize by using much better analytics. And there's other companies that have, we work with very large department stores, similar sort of thing. How do they monetize their transaction data in order to deliver better services, drive more revenue? So there's the existing companies that have these mountains of big data that have to do something to work with. That's one category. Then there's another category of applications that are now using big data for real. And those mostly fall into the category of recommendation engines and sentiment analysis right now. So we're seeing that in some, and then things that we see coming because we see them under development, and I'm not disclosing anything proprietary here, is in the security space, for example. How do you stitch together security information that's obtained through various means? For example, stitch together existing data that's coming out of webcams with data coming out of cell phone records, that's coming out of data from internet intercepts in order to have surveillance operations for governments. It's kind of scary stuff, but this is really and truly happening. We see it actually happening. And then there's the third category, which would be problems that are amenable to big data, but there's various obstacles to getting there. And we see in the life sciences, for example, there's a lot of opportunity. There's some applications, for like pharmaceuticals and clinical trials and stuff like that, that are using some aspects of big data, but there's a lot of regulatory and financial aspects to capitalizing on that and capitalizing on the Internet of Things concept too. I mean, the connectivity costs from if you have a cheap device, how do you connect it to the cloud using cellular connection? That's still, we're talking a few dollars a month for a subscription that people don't want to pay, right? And so the IoT is kind of hampered by that, particularly high value assets at the moment. So I think over time those costs are going to collapse, but there's a lot of possibility, but it haven't yet.
So out of all these different clients that you work with, do you see some that are using the tools effectively?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Like name an example.
Well,
you don't have to name the company.
An obvious example, and I won't say whether or not they're a client, so I can protect their anonymity. I have to be a little careful about that. But would be Google, right? And Google, I think, has done some obvious and non-obvious things to make the use of big data very effective. Like when I live in Palo Alto. Actually, I've lived in Palo Alto 25 years. My wife used to work in this complex, right? But when I came here, I wasn't quite sure what was building 2, right? And so I have my Apple iPhone. I looked at the mapping thing just to see where building 2 was within this complex, right? And it showed me the soccer field across the street, right? And because I live in Palo Alto, I know that's a soccer field. I know it's not building number 2, right? So I checked Google. Google got it right. But the reason they got it right is because they have thousands of people sitting there and curating the data using crowdsourcing techniques to correct things, right? And the investment that they make in getting the data right is just awesome, right? And then of course there's companies like LinkedIn. When it say here's other people you might know by God, I know probably half of them. You know, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. And then
You might not want to link to them, but you know that.
I do know them. It's like, wow, okay, you know, so they got their algorithm right, you know,
Right,
and they're really
right.
doing that well,
Right.
But there's a lot of companies that don't.
Right.
You know, like I can give some stories on that, but I don't want to take too much time. But there's two positive examples.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Matt?
Okay. Well, I want to say things other people haven't said. So, one thing that I'm hearing a lack of mention in the whole big data arena is privacy. And I think at some point, people may get fed up with that. I mean, basically everything is a privacy violation. You know, I can't even give a number to the number of companies that I talk to that, you know, their sort of special sauce is that they can track an individual across multiple networks and tell you everything about that individual. And as far as I know, you know, that's not legal. So at some point, I think we're going to see a big privacy play in this big data field, where all the stuff that's being stitched together will still have value, but you'll have to opt in at the very least. Because, you know, to me, it's a little, like yesterday, I was at this Broadcom event. They're talking about they make the chips that go in everything, so it's in their best interest to make sure that the Internet of Things takes off, because then they've got all the Wi-Fi chips and all the,
Right.
you know, different radio frequency chips and all that, and they're talking about 100% of cars sold will have an internet connection by 2020. And all I can think of is, you know, I'm certainly a technology proponent, but I actually would like fewer ways to attack my car, not more ways. And you give my car an IP address, and it's going to get attacked.
This is an interesting point.
Yeah,
Not
address
so
it
much
too.
only from the privacy. I mean, I think we've been studying millennials.
Wait, was that curmudgeonly enough?
We've been studying millennial behavior for a while through portfolio companies and other consultancies, and I would say that on private data, the approach, particularly as the millennials now are coming to enter the workforce as opposed to just influence, you know, participate in technology and influence technology. I keep saying that they're giving up their privacy one convenience at a time.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yes.
and
That's what Google counts on.
yeah. So we'll take. But I think the issue of security here is far more important. So I'm advising a couple of very large corporations that are in the Internet of Things space. And what is interesting now is that we're starting to separate the IT stack, which we're used to talk about, you know, what the CIO typically controls, from the IoT stack, the Internet of Things stack. And because when we start talking about embedded software, whether it is in automobiles, whether it is in a pacemaker, whether it is in an oven, right? I mean, you get any sort of home electronics right now, and it has more computing power than probably your desktop machine. Now you're giving opportunities for somebody to attack or to do damage in a major way, right? And I think so for me, it's not so much the privacy issue, even though it does play, as I said, it does play a role, but the security issue of data, which is not being viewed in the same way. So I think the point that you're making is an important one, particularly when we talk about the sensors and the distribution of this computing power and the obvious data generation that comes from it.
And then another really interesting aspects to privacy and so on, is the inferences you can make from the data are not necessarily obvious. You know, like probably people have heard about that instance where a teenager who shopped at Target who was pregnant, right? Target knew that she was pregnant. This is a media report. I'm not revealing anything here. That knew she was pregnant before she told her parents, right? Because of the times that she was born, right? And I heard of another one that's...
Oh, yeah, and then they got a mailer. Then the father got a mailer, right? There's something about Pampers or something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and this other one's a little off color, and I don't know this from the media, but I heard it at a conference I was at, where Fitbits, you know, these things that you wear for exercise. Have people heard this already?
Guess where this is going.
You know, a lot of people social share their Fitbit data about sleep patterns, walking, exercise, things like that. They give them permission for people to see that. But it turns out if you analyze this data, you can figure out when people are engaging in sexual activity. And apparently there were some cases where people were busted for that, you know, when they shouldn't have, they're doing something they shouldn't have been doing, right? You know, and it's like, and they gave permission to expose this data because they didn't realize the uses to which it could be put.
Actually, I think that's a big thing in educating the general public is to get them to understand the use case behind, like why should they care?
Why would they keep it private? Yeah, exactly. I don't think people realize.
Like Nest. They're talking about, right, they have an open API. They're connected to the internet, so that kind of means that a 12-year-old kid can figure out how to get into your thermostat and change the temperature in your house. And a lot of people would say, why would you care? But what if you have a vacation house? You're not there for 6 months, and, you know, as a prank now, your heat's on 100 degrees, you have a $10,000 bill. I mean, you should care. So you have to find I realize I've now hijacked the whole discussion and turned it into security. But you have to be able to explain things to people in a way that they can grasp the real threat.
The ramifications, right?
And imagine what you can do with Nest, by the way, if you can turn to the power grid. You're still talking about the privacy issue, about turning.
Right.
Yes.
Suppose suppose that 1 million homes in the Bay Area have Nest. Suppose that somebody breaks into that network, right? And just for I'm not saying you know, some enemy of the state, you know, turns up 1 million homes to 100 degrees. And think of what that will do to the grid, to power generation. I mean,
that's actually a better example.
So to me, that's the big problem here. It's not the fact that, you know, I put on Facebook that you know, I turn on from my iPhone, I can turn on my Nest thermostat to, you know, whatever degrees. I mean, again, IoT for consumer. Internet of Things for consumer has some really interesting applications, but again, it goes back. I mean, we're really we want to deal with big data, and we're dealing with a really easy stuff of the big data, and we're ignoring many of the hard stuff of the big data.
And I just do one thing, and then your turn, because you haven't even come to it. But a counterpoint on the privacy, and we really moved away from privacy, pretty interestingly, straight away into security and more technical issues. But the typical response on privacy is, oh, let's go to the government and have them solve it for us. Let's have them protect us. And I just want to say, oh, that's such a big mistake.
They're clueless.
And of course you could say NSA, haha, laugh line. But I want to say something different. I want to give the example from the EU, and I can't remember if it was GM or GE, but it was one of those biggish companies, and they were creating an internal directory of their employees. And the HR person sent, I guess, an email out saying, please give us all the updated phone numbers and whatever information, titles of your employees in each country. And they were blocked by the EU, which said you cannot send personal information about people outside of the boundary of our country. And so this is an example of a multinational company that's trying to get its own information together so they can communicate with each other, and the national barriers are coming down. You know, it's cutting with an axe instead of a scalpel. So my one approach, which I think bridges both personal privacy issues and then the security, is that the entrepreneurial community is going to solve these problems in a much more intelligent and appropriate way than most legislation. I'm not against all legislation, But please go careful.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Wait, we need to let her talk.
Wait, I know, but wait, I just want to say, it's 2 sentences. I think that privacy is going to be a much harder problem to solve than security, because the security decisions and systems, there's a motivation to build them, because the companies that own the data want to be able to make money from it, right? So they're going to do what they can to protect it. And now I'll let hold.
I'm debating whether I stick with this privacy. I'll add a few.
Or is it a trend?
It's obviously not a trend because people are giving up privacy overnight, basically. I don't think anyone thinks twice about sharing their Fitbit data or anything.
Am I the only one?
But what about from the small business standpoint? Because I know you deal a lot with small business.
Yeah, so small businesses, I think, don't mind sharing data from that perspective, right? If they're getting something back from it, right? They don't want to share it with a competitor, but giving it up at an aggregate level, I think there's a lot of people that are trying to build business models based upon this. There's so many companies we see that are trying to crowdsource data from small to medium businesses to then provide intelligence back to them.
Right.
And then for them, as long as their privacy is maintained and it's not shared, their direct data isn't shared with their competitors, it's a win for them.
It's blinded.
Blinded, yeah. But that has to be protected from a privacy perspective. And that's a really, I've seen so many companies coming out that are using this exact business model, and it's like, how do you know that they're not going to turn around and sell it to the next guy?
Right.
So that's something you really have to look at.
You've made some interesting investments. Can you talk about a few of them?
Yeah, so we've got a large, nothing I can talk about in big data, but one of our big investments is a company called DocuSign that does e-signatures. They obviously tackle a lot of these privacy issues. We went in there a few years ago before e-signatures were kind of mainstream. But
user.
There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, DocuSign's done phenomenal in terms of changing the way people do transactions.
Right.
The home buying process is now 10 times easier because of DocuSign.
And you guys made that investment early on.
Yeah, we were in there pretty early. That basically.
Good for you.
Yeah, it's made our fun.
Great.
So we made an investment in DocuSign, another company called IfByPhone that does offline to online analytics. So there's tons of companies out there that are able to go out there and analyze what you're doing on the web. There's no one that's going out there saying, you're doing all these offline campaigns, how effective are they? How do you know that those ads are actually turning into something? And so they're actually able to collect data from your billboards, your ads, your anything offline, those notepads that realtors send out, and say which ones are most effective, what's actually converting business for you. So it's basically using telephonics to do big data analysis on effective marketing. Through our REACH program, we've done everything from email marketing services to a Yelp for service professionals, if you will. So really focusing on small and medium business productivity tools.
Oh, great. Yeah. Interesting. So, Evangelos, so you and I were discussing this. So it appears that there are very few applications that you've seen that really address the big data criteria that we were talking about, the velocity and the variety. So what have you seen anything that you think is effective, that really meets that criteria?
Well, okay, so let's set the stage a little bit. So what I said is that as I said a few minutes ago, we have seen a lot of companies that are tackling the infrastructure layer of big data, and particularly the infrastructure layer for analytic applications, right? So how do I extract data from a variety of databases to bring it together? How do I store it in some common medium? How then do I start presenting some reports around it, maybe some predictive, how do I build some predictive models? Unfortunately, what I said is that, it's not unfortunate what I said, is what I said was that there are about 100 companies right now that try to address exactly the same two problems, and you don't need 100 companies. 10 would have been fine, just to have a little bit of competition. And we as investors could be particularly guilty of that, because we have, again, like in many other sectors, we have overfunded the space. So I think there are some serious problems out there, whether they are around biotech or healthcare or logistics or supply chain. I mean, there are a variety of hard problems that they deal with. The volume of the data, the variety of the data, the velocity of the data, and industrial applications of the Internet of Things, as opposed to just whether you're behaving in a hotel room or not. That calls for serious solutions, and
you're not seeing them.
And we're not seeing them. Instead, we are seeing 20 versions of social analytics. There are only so many ways that you can analyze Twitter stream, right? There are only so many ways that you can analyze your weblog. Yet we continue to, for those of you who understand machine learning, there are so many ways that you can do a decision tree algorithm, and so to have it, the 25th version is unlikely that it will give you the big differentiation. So my point is that there are some wonderful opportunities out there for solving serious problems, right, using infrastructures that we have already created, and I don't see that. I don't see that happening yet. I keep hoping that entrepreneurs will forget about the very low-hanging fruit. Right. Like it usually happens, the low-hanging fruit has already been plucked. Okay, and will start putting their energies into solving serious problems, right, and through application. Because I said there are some great opportunities there that unfortunately entrepreneurs are ignoring.
Right. So, do you think it's because they don't have the sector knowledge to be able to provide a realistic solution that could be very relevant?
Actually, I think, again, without trying to insult anybody, I think they're lazy, frankly, because I think, I've been an entrepreneur twice, and I think there is, good entrepreneurs find a way to pull together good founding teams to go solve good problems, right, in big market opportunities, and these are the ones that succeed. Now, as I said, sometimes you get really lucky, and the problem you're trying to solve is a low-hanging fruit that nobody else saw, and you can address it without bringing, rocket scientists together. But other times, in healthcare, for example, you do need to bring maybe doctors or biologists in order to address a problem. Right. In biologics, in customized medicine, right? There's a great opportunity for innovation there, and it will not be just a software engineer coming together with a salesperson. It will require hard science, right? And so I think my sense is that maybe because the money has been easy, maybe because whatever reasons, we have not been solving the hard problems.
The hard problems. David,
I like the counterpoint, yes, because, and I just would say a little bit of patience, because you look at a little bit mostly later stage, and we're looking at the earlier, and I think a number of our companies are going to be ready to bring to you, on a silver platter soon that are pretty damn exciting, and I'll give you a couple examples of different fields, because I think, for example, in the vertical of retail, a couple of you mentioned already that there's a huge amount of data, but it's sitting there kind of unused, unexplored. Right. They know that there's value there, but they just haven't done it. So I'll give you one example. This is a company we invested in as a complete startup. When we invested, they had, I think, 24 grocery stores as customers. 24 grocery stores. That's it. Not chains, but stores. And like Cala and Molly Stones and little ones like that. And this is a company called Revionics in Sacramento area. and we were the first investor with Sierra Ventures, and what they do is pricing optimization for retail stores. Now, what they do is they have experts, a few people, brilliant data scientists, which are in short supply. Send us every data scientist you know. All of our companies are hiring them. So please, that's my takeaway. What Revionics did was they gathered data on what was the competitive pricing situation for your store versus every other store that was your competitor in the neighborhood, plus tied in the weather data, because you don't buy the same amount of suntan cream in Alaska and Florida in December, and other data like the brand supply data specials that week from Procter & Gamble that we're giving rebates and so on. So all this is data that the store manager needs to know how to price optimally for their market. So anyway, they grabbed all this stuff together, and then by now, 4.5-5 years later, not 24 stores, they have 65,000 stores that they're doing it. Every week we send them a list of every single SKU, every item in their store, what they should price it at, how many they'll sell, and what margin they'll get. And so they can plan week by week what they should be doing. Then at the end of the week comes back their point of sale data to us. So now they've been making a very nice business. They're growing super. Motorola just invested just on SaaS model, selling this predictive modeling of how you should price. But guess what? They're building this in giant database of every item that's been sold in 65,000 stores, growing on a curve over the last 5 years. That's going to be very valuable data.
Right. Right.
So, just one example. Yes, sir. He's waiting to respond.
No. just to make sure that my comments are not misunderstood, is that I didn't say there are no companies out there. Right. I mean, we have in our portfolio a few companies that definitely satisfy some of the criteria that I've said. I'm just saying that in comparison to the number of companies that are doing infrastructure, they're trying to do a lot of the same thing.
Okay.
That's all.
I agree with you there, and I think that's perhaps because the hard problems demand solutions that vertical people come and fix.
That's what I was going to say.
Now, and I think that's why. So there'll be one more vertical area that seems to be really interesting, and this is like finding a needle in a haystack.
Oh wait,
somebody else.
I just want to go back real quickly.
Okay.
So what's the results from Revionics?
Okay.
What kind of results are they producing for those individual stores? I would just be curious.
Bottom line, retail is a very low margin business, and they're generally saving their customers 1 to 2% margin, or gaining them 1 to 2% margin, which is a very big deal in that realm.
That's huge.
Right, and they started in only physical bricks and mortar stores, and now they're going into the online as well. Very exciting, story. And again, they've only tapped half of the business, which is the predictive stuff.
Right.
Then there's all this data mining that they can do with this sort of that they're gathering. That's one. Then second one, totally different area, financial services, which is also reams of data from financial services companies. They know everything, but they know nothing. It's a weird dichotomy. So think of the asymmetry of data. There is incredible rich data for credit in the developed countries. If you're going to the developing countries where there are 2 billion people moving up from poverty to middle class, there's almost no data on them. So if you want to expand middle class credit, which is a defining characteristic of being middle class and buying all the stuff that we take for granted, which people in China and India and Brazil want to do and are doing increasingly, you need to have middle class credit data. So where do you look for data if there are no data bureaus in your country? Guess what? There's this thing called Facebook. And so we have a company called Lendo that's based in New York City, and they help make credit decisions for poor to middle class people in Colombia and the Philippines and all over using Facebook to help figure out who's creditworthy, et cetera, share it with their friends, and make them, short to medium term loans. I'm just giving it. I'm going to stop because I don't want to take too much time. But as an example of such an amazing amount of data that is in a completely, non-obvious network for this purpose. Okay.
I just. Again, another 2-sentence thing, just because it relates directly to this Lendo.
Sure.
On Monday, there's a conference, the Future of Money and Technology, at the Hotel Kabuki in San Francisco, and I'm running a panel exactly about this topic, how to make better credit decisions using big data. So there's my plug. It's futureofmoney.com if you want to check it out.
Can I go to the privacy issue? Because privacy, what is more private than your reputation for are you trustworthy? Will you pay back your loans, right?
I don't know. Can you get that from Facebook?
Yes.
I don't think you're going to get whether I'm trustworthy or not.
We do, and here's how. And I'm going to go first. I'm going to go back to the 19th century. Everybody lived in villages. In villages, everybody knew who was trustworthy.
Right.
Everybody knew who was the drunk. Everybody knew who was the stalwart. Everyone knew who was the hard workers. Our societies, we grew up in caves, right, cavemen, and now in the 19th century, until very, very recently, we knew who the trustworthy people, and bankers used to bank on character, not balance sheet. Okay, now fast forward, we have a new way to bank on character again, using, say, Facebook and many other social medias, but with Facebook, what we do is we have, Lendo uses friends to rate each other.
For their credit.
For their credit,
For their
worthiness,
credit.
and how,
Okay.
and your ability to borrow is based on how well you rate them. Not on how accurately you rate them. Not, you can give all your friends a good rating because you're your friend. That, will not get you a good rating yourself. But if you're accurate in your ratings, you get to borrow cheaper. So it's a gamification that keeps people honest. Anyway, back to you.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to touch on Evangelos' point for a little bit. So we look at a lot of predictive analytics companies that, and I think someone from Sotheby's here, so this will come home really fast. A lot of realtors are thinking about how can I find clients faster, cheaper. Everyone here probably gets these packets in the mail or magnets in the mail from a realtor, and it's like they're literally just blanketing the entire neighborhood. Is that effective? So there's a lot of companies out there that are going out there that are saying, can we find from a 2,000 home farm, can we identify the top 200 that are actually going to be buying a home? It turns out only about 50 move a year from 1,000. 5%. Sorry, 500 move a year from 1,000.
From 10,000.
From 10,000.
Yes.
50 move from 1,000. So the challenge we faced is companies actually aren't able to get the accuracy right. This data is, you've got all sorts of data on what trends people use to move. Is it changes in schools, changes in jobs, changes in family, and all this data is available, right? Because you've got all these data sources. You've got Facebook, LinkedIn, but they're not able to connect it well enough to bring that predictive number down yet. But it's powerful. I mean, if you can actually do that, you can dramatically change the impact of any small and medium business sales guy. And that's huge. So I think the opportunity is massive. We're still early because this data wasn't previously available. This is all available in the last 5 to 10 years.
That's another key, yeah.
Not even 10 years, mostly 5 years. So to be
Correct.
able to understand what the data is, number one, but then to understand how you can use it and to bring in the kind of human intelligence into these algorithms will take time.
But what you're making a very good point, and in that what you're saying is not so much about the predictive ability of the algorithm. It's the fact that you need somebody who understands many people who understand enough about the domain to know what data to bring together, and how to bring it together, right? And I agree that in any of these problems, that's why I talk a lot about applications, because underlying that, you may have an infrastructure like Hadoop or Cassandra or whatever the case may be, but that is just a piece of infrastructure. What data you're going to bring into this infrastructure, how you're going to how you're going to connect it, not really how to organize, but really how you're going to connect, how you're going to clean it, how you're going to summarize it in some case, expand it in others.
Right.
That is at the crux of it, and that's what makes an application, right? And that's why I was saying before, I really wish that we have more. I wish we had more avionics. I mean, and again, as I said, I know the company well. But in comparison to the number of opportunities that we see of companies like that are trying to address this kind of real problems, to the companies that we see that are just trying to recreate another piece of infrastructure, that's where my frustration is.
Well, I think what's happening too is the early successes are around gathering and regurgitating the data, basically. Like Splunk, for example. Just gathers the data, does some minor massaging, displays it in some useful way, right? And then I think the emerging generation that you're talking about is institutionalizing insights that you might gain from examining the data, right? You know, so like another application I heard that I thought was very interesting is predicting who's going to move, right? You know, or predicting who's likely to churn. And this has been around for a long time. Who's likely to churn in their cell phone plan? That's one of the very early applications, because if your friends have left the network, you're more likely to move the network, and you know, you can analyze the call data records and figure out who's still in network and who's moved and who you're calling, get your social graph, all that kind of stuff. So first coming up with those insights, and then institutionalizing. And then I think the biggest barrier to adoption, though, is how do you structure your organization to act on those insights, right? So, you know, there's certain trends like fast fashion, for example, which relies on a very rapid propagation of data. It's approaching the big data realm, you know, but whole organizations, you know, like H&M, Zara, things like that, are founded in order to act flexibly on the information they gain. But when you go into, I mean, a lot of the clients that we deal with, for example, are, I mean, some of them are startups. We deal with a lot of startups, but we also deal with some older, you know, multi-billion-dollar companies. No matter what insight they come up with, they're not going to be able to act on it because the politics of the company locks their current behavior into place, right? So, you know, one reason that, you know, so big, the data, the insight is totally useless, you know, unless you're the CEO and you have, you know, a big whip and you're going to take years to transform the company, you know, like, you know, GE or IBM, total turnaround, you know. So I think a lot of people are going to be disintermediated by big data, which is one thing slowing down the adoption, right? And then a whole new generation of companies are going to be enabled by it that are going to start displacing people in various traditional areas like retail, automotive. We see that arguably happening in, you know, Tesla and others, and you know, the whole industries I think are going to be enabled and killed off by this.
It's interesting. I was reading an IDC study that said, how effective is your business intelligence? And 41% of companies said they didn't know, they didn't have the right tools. Their business intelligence is helping it out. And it's scary because they're investing so much money in this. 36% of people said they did know, but like it's you have to be able to measure how effective what your intelligence is.
Right, exactly.
Otherwise, it's worthless.
Exactly. What were you going to say, David?
I was listening to a fellow speak at a TED Talk the other day, and he was giving an interesting counter. The artificial intelligence theme that's been sort of led by Marvin Minsky's sort of paradigm had a counterpoint at that period by Linklater. You probably studied with him. And it was like IA, intelligence augmented, or augmentation of intelligence. And it's a human-computer collaboration.
Yeah.
Not that the computers think for themselves and do everything, but that there's this interaction. And just as a TED, the example of it he gave was recently in 1997, Kasparov was beaten by Deep Blue, right? You built it or something. I think you were involved there. No? He's very, very smart. And in 2005, a team of 2 mid-level chess players, assisted by 3 PCs, beat both the fastest supercomputer that was playing against them in an open computer chess tournament and the great master, assisted by a medium-sized computer. So it was 2 mid-level guys, humans, and 3 computers beat the best computer and the best chess master. So the idea is collaboration, and humans have insights that computers never will, and computers do things, obviously, that computers and humans can never do. So this combination, and I'm going to give one more example to bring it home. There's a huge asymmetry of information, and that's another revolution that big data can help. Big data has been available for Citibank and Visa and all the fintech companies for years, or Macy's, versus you, the consumer. You've, had what does your sister buy and what did your uncle do and so on. Very anecdotal. So there are companies that we're seeing and we're investing in that are going to try and equalize the playing field. And I think the 99%, 1% divide. Well, technology is going to solve that because we're going to empower the underclass to have data available to them through this incredible combination of machine plus crowdsourcing. And I'll give you just one: FEEX, F-E-E-X, and this is taking on the big banks, the 401k providers, anybody that offers financial services, credit cards. Because are you getting the very best deal you could get right now from those folks?
How do you know?
Probably not, and certainly how do you know?
How do you know?
Okay,
Right.
so very simple user interface, and again, this goes to the issue of one of the key things that we VCs are early stage looking for is reducing friction to get you the data you need. So how do you get there? So simple. Take your smartphone, take a photocopy of your bank statement, your credit card statement, whatever it is, send it to us. We will come back and show you exactly what people like you are paying, what kind of terms you're getting versus them. If you're paying too much, we give you 3 or 4 alternatives that you can choose to, and we give you an email ready and a phone number that says you can call this person at your bank, you can send this email because you want better terms. Because you know on third-party data, you're paying too much or you're getting worse terms, whatever. But the idea, again, is leveraging the data with domain experts who are, have the insight, plus the machine data, plus
Right.
crowdsourcing of information like from small businesses or individuals to help you compete and have real information fair markets.
And so where are you launching that?
It already launched in Israel, and they're about to launch probably in January in the U.S. And their first product in Israel, my partner in Israel saved $1,500 a year on one of his little savings accounts by calling his bank for 15 minutes and saying to them, I want a better rate. And they said, yes, sir. Because if they lose him, the lifetime value of what they lose is so huge that it was much better in their interest, too, to keep him a happy customer and save him a lot.
And they're crowdsourcing everybody
They
else's
crowdsource the data.
bills and then telling you, okay, everyone else got this. I mean, this is
That's right.
we talked about trends. This is a huge trend.
Yes.
How do
that
you
is a
collect
huge trend.
people's data and then aggregate it up and send it back to them?
We have invested in a company, actually, we have invested in a company called RHI, which WellPoint, the insurance company, acquired. And they were doing something similar with regards to prescriptions, right? So they will get access in an opt-in basis to the prescriptions that individuals get, and they will do a few things. They will look at places where you can replace a brand with the generic in order to save money, where you can save money by doing e-commerce versus in-store purchase, and they also opportunities where you can purchase things in advance. So again, they will look at a variety of data types, and every month they will mail you with, okay, here's what you're getting, here's what you're paying, and here's what you could be paying if you were willing to change. And ultimately, again, we do a number of investments around healthcare cost reduction, and that was an early application of big data and predictive analytics and data warehousing and consumer the overall user experience in terms of how do you present this information in a way that the audience, I mean in this case the consumer does not become scared. Okay, what are you trying to pull a fast one on me? But sees that as a value exchange. Yeah, you gave me some data, I'm giving you some value which you can use without the quality of your healthcare coming down. And it was a great investment. It was a great exit, and continues to be for WellPoint. I guess it continues to be a great business.
Right. Have you seen other ones in healthcare that you think have been effective?
In healthcare, we have been spending a lot of time right now with outcomes analysis. So to trying to understand, for example, so as you may be aware, the insurers are starting to look at why the cost of certain procedures is different from hospital to hospital, or from hospital chain to hospital chain. So you need to, so in order to understand, this is a very big data problem, because you need to look at what doctors are prescribing and what tests they are prescribing, with what frequency they're prescribing it. You need to see the medical history of each patient, and you need to see what have been the outcomes of the tests. How many times they prove to be important in diagnosing a particular situation, or in changing a regimen which led to an improved to an improvement of some sort, right? And they can impact on what kind of direction we give to doctors without sacrificing quality of healthcare. That's the important part, right? I mean, it's easy for an insurer to say to an HMO, we're only going to allow you 15 minutes per patient, and we expect a doctor to see 100 patients a day. It is much harder to say we will, while we allow that, we will also improve the quality of care and reduce costs by, let's say, 20% or by 15%, something meaningful, right? So those are some of the, and we have a couple of companies that are starting to work.
That's interesting.
If I could just interject on that, it's get excited about this area because there's so much that can be done. But the issue that a lot of companies have is in the United States with the FDA regulation. Any interest, any information that's used for the diagnosis or treatment of a disease is regulated by the FDA, and the regulatory process is fairly
favorite.
Government
regulation.
Oh, it's fairly onerous. So what we're actually seeing happening is a lot of innovation is shifting to India in particular, and I assume also in China, where lives are there's more risk than the FDA is willing to take, but lives are clearly being saved by using these techniques. And I think what's going to happen is a lot of innovation is shifting there. And once it gets up the learning curve, it's going to shift back to the United States. But we're just totally, I've had these conversations, with medical device companies that are our clients, and we work with the embedded software. We say, you realize what you can do with this data with the diabetes, the glucose stuff. We could actually correlate with this other data and then do some predictions and really do some wellness. And they're like, no, they're scared to death. And it's totally technically, there's no technical.
One of the advantages is, again, the drive for cost containment has started the organization of hospitals into chains.
Yes.
And so it is becoming a little easier because you're looking within a chain, right, as opposed to having to look at 5 individual hospitals, which again, I agree with you. That's a much harder problem. And at least if you can solve within the chain, then you can start providing the proof points that will convince other parties that maybe there is, especially in these days where we're talking about reducing healthcare costs without sacrificing quality.
Right.
Exactly.
And one of the things that people are doing to get around the regulatory issues, and by the way, I'm not saying there aren't real safety concerns. There are real safety concerns. It's not all arbitrary. I'm generally opposed to regulation on principle, but I also recognize I'm glad somebody checked over my pacemaker before. I don't have a pacemaker, but if I did, I'd be really glad that there was some oversight, right? But what people are getting around is they're putting a human in the loop, right? So, for example, your bolus of insulin, right? So easily computed from data that you can gather over your mobile phone, right? But it doesn't do the computation for you, right? Because if it said inject this much insulin, that would be medical device. That would be a medical diagnosis and treatment. Means it's regulated, which means it goes through 2 to 3 years of approval cycle. So it would give you the data, and then you would use a normal calculator to compute your bolus of insulin, and then give yourself the shot, right? Or the human is in the loop to dispense the actual medication and so on. And it's solely for regulatory reasons. And there's so much that could be done. It's frustrating to me. Sorry.
Let's open up to the audience. Do you have any questions that you want to ask our panel? Since we're getting so engrossed in all these different areas.
Actually, I have an observation about what Evangelos said, that people are shying away from tough problems. The problem which jumped to my mind is the traditional enterprise data, which is now running into petabytes. And it is a known fact, between 50 and 90% of this data is inaccessible. People, they don't know it. Number two, the quality of data is bad. And this is a problem which everyone is shying away from. With this in mind, whatever analytics you do with part of the data is going to be skewed, it's going to be inaccurate. And here, Angus, he said, entrepreneurs are lazy. We're not lazy, we're not all of them. These are the problems which we have been dealing with. People are shying away from it, they are tough. It's not something you can formulate a solution in 3 or 4 months. You have to go deep. And this is what we did in ITER. We have a technology to deal with this, and we believe this is the crux of the matter. Like, you find financial institutions, they have to calculate 1,000 Russell rebalance every Friday. They can't do it because the data is coming fast, and oil industry, they cannot assimilate all the data to predict or to improve the productivity. Here I am not talking about ads. Ads in ads analytics, if it's off by 10-15%, it doesn't matter. But in enterprise data, accuracy is important.
Right.
People got to look at all the data. They have to analyze all of it. But I agree, people are shying away from the tough problems.
Any other questions? Comments?
I have one more thing to say.
Yes.
Well, I have more than one more thing to say, but I think one thing that a number of us touched on is that a successful big data program, not meaning code, but actually like an institutional program, requires an understanding of what data is out there that you can get and how to get it, as well as an understanding of how to model it. And then there's the infrastructure that's under it.
Right.
So I think when you're looking at offerings and trying to evaluate how useful they are, you have to understand that these processes have to be present in order for anything really to be useful.
I'll slightly disagree there. I think so many people are looking at, we've got this data, how can we make it useful? I think you need more people thinking about, we've got these problems, what data can we gather to make it to solve these problems?
Oh, but I agree. I'm saying they're two different expertises.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's kind of, you could look at it the other way around and kind of get to the same answer, but actually solve your problem and actually make an impact on improving your bottom line for businesses or consumers.
David, you sound like you're really looking at a lot of emerging market opportunities in financial services and basically democratizing, right, the accessibility of data to be able to facilitate a lot of these new products. So what other opportunities or trends do you see there that you think people can, that investors can capitalize on, or even entrepreneurs?
Sure, I'll give you a domestic one, but it has to do with the gap. And you talked about emerging markets, so gap between poor and rich, but there's also the gap in the U.S. between large corporations, the Fortune 1000, and small businesses. Your clientele and so on. And recently, there's an amazing statistic. It's scary. It's a real problem, an example of what the government is not dealing with that it should be, and that is the problem of small business credit, cash flow for small businesses. Okay, the day sales outstanding, which is a ratio in financial services of how much you have out in product that you haven't been paid for yet, has doubled in the United States in the last decade. Okay, from 30 to 60 days. That's for all businesses. For small businesses, it's averaging over 90 days now. Now, after 2008, the crash of the banks, okay, and extreme regulation to try and solve that problem has made it actually worse. The banks are more frightened to lend to small businesses now.
Sure.
Okay, the economy recovery has been anemic. it's not interest rates that are high. That's not the problem. But the other thing is that the payable side, the payers, the big companies like Walmart and state governments and others are pushing out the payables too. They're saying we're going to pay you. We used to pay 45 days. Now we're going to pay 90 days. So this is all squeezing on the back of the small businesses, right? Some of you are nodding heads because you agree, and you're maybe, hopefully not, but feeling it personally. So what's the problem? Well, people used to borrow from small banks. Now the banks are not lending so much. They're forced to go to factoring companies.
Also acquired by the larger banks.
Also true.
So
all of this is true. The cost of underwriting, basically for a bank, is the same on a small account or a big account. Right? It kind of, so if you can get that human underwriting element out of it and move toward machine learning and using more big data, then you can drop the cost so dramatically. And so we have a company called Fundbox that is going to take on this problem, and there are probably a few other similar folks that, not to just tout their horn, that are trying to do this too, but get rid of the inefficiency of the human underwriting process, make this a much more efficient, streamlined, automated process, and in the process be able to make very fast, short-term cash advances that are very tied to understanding in real-time data terms with the APIs that you just said are only 5 years old, where we can understand cash balances and the issues of our counterparty risks.
Right.
And in a nightly basis understand what the risks are as we do these cash advances for small businesses, and then amalgamate them together to create sort of a short-term commercial paper for small business. This is a product that's never even existed. It existed for the big businesses, but it wasn't possible to do it and aggregate for small business. So I think it's another incredible solution for a huge problem.
Right.
But it only was possible because of the API revolution, the cloud revolution, great platforms like Intuit that aggregate lots of data from small business, etc. Okay.
Where's the capital coming from?
Very good question. It can come either from balance sheet, which right now is small at the company,
Right.
or probably more likely will be a flow-through. Will be an engine to figure out the credit risk, and then we'll work with banks or hedge funds or whoever wants to provide the money to be the lenders.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
if I could just chime in, we're going to finish up, but that's another technical trend that we're seeing is that the Hadoop, it sounds a little weird to say they're traditional since they're only like 5 or 6 years old, but Hadoop, MongoDB, Couchbase, all that kind of stuff are more batch processing sorts of technologies. We're seeing increasing interest in some products being developed that deal with streaming data. Obviously, Twitter Storm being one of the examples, but IBM Streams, LinkedIn recently open sourced a streaming solution and so on. And I think that's going to be, and of course for IoT, that's critical.
Right.
So we're seeing it as a technical trend, more dealing with data, real-time streaming data as it comes in, real-time decision making.
I mean, again, we'll talk about new applications, high-impact applications in the energy space,
Yes.
oil exploration, in particular, through sensor data, through other types of data, seismic data, right? We have a company called TND that is looking at this kind of data in order to make either old wells productive again, so that because through the data now you're changing the economics, or make it more efficient to identify production wells. And again, it's not only the seismic data, you need to bring economic data, you need to bring transportation data, in terms of how you move the resource around. And so again, interesting applications.
And the energy companies are using that solution.
Yeah,
right.
In the case of this company, TND is the exploration and production arms of the oil companies that are using it.
I think you see a lot, Jim, because you deal with so many different sectors.
Yeah,
What do you see are some big opportunities that are not tapped yet that you think people could look into?
Definitely the real-time and analytics is one of them. I think probably a couple of the most interesting ones we've seen have been around real-time supply chain information being processed for fleet management, for sensor data.
Here, solutions too. Yeah, say yours, and then I want to ask him what he's doing.
Oh, okay, yeah. And then I heard, I had dinner with an entrepreneur yesterday, and I don't want to spill his idea, but it related to social knowledge management, a kind of LinkedIn for ideas, where you correlate who's working on similar problems, right? And who's interested in investing in those problems, and who's interested, so you create sort of a meta LinkedIn. That's not, and I think the real challenge of that kind of an application is the thing LinkedIn itself has done really well is a combination of structured and unstructured data. The way it has your name, it has your previous companies, those are structured data, and then there's a lot of unstructured data. And the type of analytics it does, it can correlate people based on the structured data, or also do deep mining in the unstructured data. And I think few companies get that balance right. That's going to be the challenge for that kind of application, but I think there's some very exciting areas of knowledge exploration and knowledge management popping up along there.
Great. Any final words?
I think one final word is, as people start thinking about big data, really think about what business problem you're trying to solve, and how you can use data to do that. That's often, I think, missed, because there's just tons of data that people can access, and it's really cool to be looking at it, but cool doesn't actually improve the bottom line.
Right.
Well said.
How about you, Matt? Any final words?
Final words.
Any words, pearls of wisdom you want to cast to the audience?
I don't know. I think I may have shared most of my pearls of wisdom here. I've actually really enjoyed this panel.
Great.
So,
I'd love to ask our friends from Sweden. Tell us a little bit about what you do with your company and any data that you capture.
We originate from a media group, and we own a lot of media houses that we managed to transform from print to digital. And in this process, we realized that we don't really own the data. We have a lot of data, or we have a lot of traffic on our sites, on our websites and news sites, but we don't really own the data. So what we're doing now is we're launching a payment system. So you can pay for the news, you can buy stuff on our sites, and by doing that, we are trying to actually get information about our visitors, more information, so we can use the data to capitalize on that data. So it's nothing fancy, more fancy than that, but it's just a start. Because as I said earlier, we realized that Google, they have all of the information already in our countries, so it's kind of difficult to go head-to-head competition with them. But this is one way of doing it.
Right.
We need to protect our data.
Right, exactly. Evangelos, final words?
It's late.
David, Jim, anything?
No, then I already said mine.
I'll just give one example of what I think was a pretty good user interface that reduced friction dramatically in a particular area of my interest, which was genealogy. And I'm not an investor in it, I wish I was, but Ancestry.com has done an amazing job of taking what was impenetrable, difficult, disparate, siloed data in different languages and formats and so on and so forth. And now it comes to you pop up your family tree, and there'll be a little sticker or flag that sort of says, we think we found a connection for you that's relevant. And then you use your human intuition and the peripheral knowledge that you have, and they're all their data crunching, and it's usually very helpful to you. So it's just one example of let's cut out the friction, liberate the data, solve big problems, and thank people for building that great infrastructure, because all this rides on what has been built before. We're the inheritors of blessings.
That is true. That is true. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I
would like to thank our sponsor, Morgan Lewis, for hosting us this evening, and for the fabulous smooth layout we had this evening. Let's give them a big hand. And we can't get away without saying thank you so much to Charlene for pulling this fabulous panel together. And the discussion was absolutely terrific.
Big. It was big.
So we're going to try to get the videos out really quickly this time because it was a great discussion. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for coming.
It's a pleasure.
It was really nice meeting you.